Mediation.
Continuation upon resumption. Questions without notice. Senator Sterle.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. Sadly, my question is to the Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck. 2 days before Christmas last year, Lee received a call from her 86-year-old father's aged care home, Regis, Netherlands in Perth, telling her he was in an ambulance to the hospital. Her father, Brian Hunter, was, and I quote, slumped over in bed and his back was exposed. I could see his back was really terribly burnt. His whole back was burned, and he was not speaking to us. He was semi-in and out of consciousness. Brian, a double amputee who had lost both legs due to diabetes, had been left out on a rooftop terrace on a 40-degree day for 2 hours. Nobody noticed he was missing for 2 hours. Brian tragically died on the 20th of January this year, more than 12 months after the Royal Commission's interim report entitled Neglect. Minister, how is this neglect continuing on your watch?
The Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. I thank Senator Sterle for his question. We are all very disturbed by any circumstance of poor treatment, poor care of any resident in an aged care facility in this country, Mr President. And, Mr President, it should not keep happening. To your point, Senator Watt, it should not keep happening. Mr President, can I say I will be very cautious with respect to the allegations that are currently being aired with respect to Regis, because I know that there are a number of investigations that are being undertaken with respect to the allegations that apply to this particular facility. I've had quite a number of briefings with respect to this from the Quality Commission and my department, and I've also had a number of conversations elsewhere with respect to this matter. And, Mr President, can I say I am very concerned that these allegations have come to light. There's a coroner's review that's underway, Mr President. There has been a police investigation that has found no circumstance of criminality with respect to the allegations that are currently being aired in relation to Regis, Mr President. And, of course, the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission has issued both a sanction and a notice to agree against Regis Netherlands with respect to the allegations that are being raised. All of these allegations, Mr President, are very, very concerning. The government, members on this side, are just as concerned as anyone in any other part on the chamber, Mr President. We all remain concerned of it. We are concerned for the families and the circumstances that they find themselves in, and we would like to get to the bottom of this matter as much as anybody.
Senator Sterle, a supplementary question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr President. The day after Brian's hospitalisation, the hospital reported Regis to the Morrison government's regulator, the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. Nobody visited Regis Netherlands until the 11th of January, 3 weeks later. When did the minister first become aware of Brian's tragic death, and what action has he taken to ensure this neglect never, ever happens again?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. In relation to the specific date that I became aware of the resident's death, I can't give you that specifically, but I'm happy to provide that information to the chamber, Mr President. But as I've said, the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission has issued both a sanction and a notice to agree on Regis Netherlands. That is an appropriate process. And, Senator, I will take your interjection. You are right. It should not agree. It should not have occurred in the first place, Mr President. And that, Mr President, goes to Mr President.
Order.
Mr President, that's why we call the Royal Commission. That's why one of the first acts of Prime Minister Morrison was to call a Royal Commission to undertake a forensic review of the aged care sector, and so that we could put in place the reforms that will stop these sorts of events, lift the entire sector, and so that we do have a better and world-class aged care system in this country.
A final supplementary question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr President. Regis Netherlands had been sanctioned in November 2019, 14 months before Brian died, for putting the safety and health of residents at risk. How many more older Australians will tragically die because of the ongoing neglect in the Morrison government's aged care system?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Unfortunately, what Senator Sterle has done is neglected to advise the chamber of other assessments of this organisation, who, you're correct, did receive a sanction at that point in time, but were subsequently assessed to be compliant with the standards. And so they had had a problem, they'd put in place corrective action to fix it, and subsequently been assessed. Mr President, a sanction is not a life sentence. It is a process to improve the capacity of the service, Mr President, and that's what I expect. That's what all of us expect should occur. And, Mr President, that's what I expect from Regis in the context of the circumstance that are occurring right now, Mr President. Regis are currently under both a sanction and a notice to agree, and both of those tools are designed to improve the quality of service at the facility. And, Mr President, that is what I expect.
Senator Fawcett.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is also to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. Can the Minister update the Senate on the national COVID-19 vaccine rollout and how this is underpinning our health and economic recovery?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Senator Fawcett, for your question. Mr President, it has been an important week for all Australians. We are now into day 4 of the mass vaccine rollout across the country. We are prioritising the most vulnerable in society, as we should, to receive the vaccine first. Aged care residents, border, quarantine and frontline health workers have the opportunity to have their first dose of the vaccine this week, Mr President. Both the Pfizer, BioNTech and the AstraZeneca vaccines require 2 separate doses for a person to be fully immunised. Pfizer, BioNTech 21 days apart, AstraZeneca 12 weeks apart. Phase 1A remains on track for the first round of doses to be delivered within a 6-week period, Mr President. Under the Australian Government's plan, quarantine and border workers and aged care residents are on track to be vaccinated by April. You can be assured that the vaccination rollout is well underway in your home state of South Australia, Senator Fawcett. I am advised that 933 people have had their first dose in South Australia, and we expect those figures to ramp up significantly as weeks progress. We thank all Australians, Mr President, particularly the frontline health workers, for their commitment and hard work to rolling out this vaccine across the country. Our vaccination program will underpin our health and economic recovery.
Senator Fawcett, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. Can the Minister provide an update on how many Australians nationwide have been vaccinated in this first week of the rollout?
Senator Colbeck.
Thanks, Mr President. Thanks, Senator Fawcett. Mr President, the aged care rollout is part of Phase 1A. It will progressively ramp up as the week progresses. It's one of the things that we have asked the providers to do, is to start cautiously to make sure that things are moving progressively. There have been more than 17,500 vaccines reported to the Commonwealth as having been administered across the country. So far this week, our vaccination teams have visited 71 residential aged care facilities, and almost 4,700 residents have received the vaccine. We expect health care teams to visit an additional 20 facilities today and vaccinate a further 1,600 residents, Mr President. In coming weeks, the program will reach more than 2,600 residential aged care facilities and more than 183,000 residents and 339,000 staff.
Senator Fawcett, a final supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. Minister, could you outline what results are being seen around the world as a result of vaccination programs?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Senator Fawcett. Data is coming in from around the world on other countries' vaccine rollouts. For example, there are very encouraging results coming out of Scotland. Among Scotland's 5.4 million people, they've administered over 1 million doses of vaccine. They're using the Pfizer vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine, as is Australia, Mr President. And the study has looked at the numbers admitted to hospital with COVID, those that have had those and those that have not had the vaccines. Research led by Public Health Scotland found at 4 weeks after the first dose, hospital admissions were reduced by 85% for the Pfizer vaccine and, Mr President, 94% for AstraZeneca jabs. So these are very encouraging early results. 2 leading vaccines that work against severe end of the spectrum, and there's further evidence that it's working in a real-world setting, so very encouraging news.
Order. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr President. My question today is to the Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck. Lisa's father, 94-year-old Dick Lee, was allegedly abused at Regis Nedlands. A report details that he was found, and I quote, on the floor near the entrance of his room, completely unclothed and sitting in his faeces, with a carer standing over him. I asked the carer, did he fall? And the carer said, no. The carer was later witnessed dragging Mr Lee into the bathroom. More than 12 months after the Royal Commission's interim report entitled Neglect. How is this neglect still continuing on this minister's watch?
The Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator Pratt, for the question. Mr President, I will continue to be, in the answer to this question, cautious with respect to what I say about the specifics of the allegations that have been made in this case, as I was in the question from Senator Stirl. These cases are subject to coroners' inquests. They are subject to independent review processes that have been commissioned, and of course they have also been,
Order.
Mr President, subject to a police investigation, Mr President.
Order.
What I will say is that nobody in this place wants to see mistreatment of any senior Australia resident
Order.
in aged care in this country. That is why we called the Royal
Senator
Commission
Watt.
into aged care quality and safety so that we could conduct a comprehensive review of the sector and
Order
that
on
we
my
could
left.
put in place the appropriate regulatory regimes that support high-quality care for all senior Australians in
Order.
the country. Mr President, I'll take the interjection from the other side, Mr President, because at the last budget, when we put billions of dollars into aged care, what did the opposition put in respect of aged care in their
Order.
budget in reply? Not a single dollar, Mr President.
Order.
A lot of
Senator
crocodile
Colbeck,
tears, a lot of crocodile tears on
I
the
have
other
Senator
side, Mr.
Wong on a
President,
point of
but
order.
they have done nothing for decades.
Senator Colbeck, I have Senator Wong on a point of order. I didn't hear anything unparliamentary. Senator Wong is on her feet.
And to get into withdrawals, we also have crocodile tears, which impugns what we are asking when we're asking about neglect, but I don't propose to go down that path. I'm raising an issue of direct relevance. This minister is asked, not— I'm sorry?
Order. I can't. Order. Senator Wong has got the call. Interjections
the
are
senator
always
that wants
disorderly
to say
and
that on
particularly
his feet.
unhelpful. I missed something completely. Senator Wong on the point of order.
No, I don't actually. I just want to make my point. Mr President, we're asking questions about some very serious allegations. There is one question that the minister has been asked, which is how is the neglect continuing on his watch more than 12 months after he's received the Royal Commission report. I'd ask you to remind him of the question.
Senator Wong, I believe the minister was being directly relevant and then responded to interjections, which was not being directly relevant. I will remind the minister of the question. I'll also remind people not to interject, and therefore the distraction and the opportunity won't occur. Senator Colbeck to continue.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, and of course, with respect to the interim report of the Royal Commission and of course the COVID-19 report of the Royal Commission, the government has responded to both of those reports we have continued to reform the sector, passing new legislation which places additional responsibilities on the sector, the Serious Incident Response Scheme, which was passed through this place only last week, Mr President. So we have continued to reform the sector as while the Royal Commission has continued, and we will continue to do so.
Sorry, Senator Birmingham, on a point of order.
Mr President, make a point of order in relation to conduct in the chamber and interjections. Senator Wong, in making her point of order before, demanded complete silence in the chamber before she spoke, and yet, since Senator Colbeck got back on his feet, Senator Wong has shown nothing but lack of courtesy in listening to that answer and showing double standard in relation to the behaviour that she expected when she was on her feet.
All interjections are disorderly. Order. I'm going to ask that people at least stop the interjections while I talk. It's the end of a fortnight. I'm going to ask people to restrain themselves. I was attempting to call the chamber to order. I will start raising my voice if I need to, but interjections are not helpful and they are disorderly. Senator Pratt, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. A few days after the alleged neglect, Mr Lee became ill and his daughter's concerns that something was seriously wrong were dismissed. Mr Lee was eventually rushed to hospital where he was in a coma, had liver failure and he died the next day. So I ask, when did the minister first become aware of Mr Lee's tragic death, and what action has he taken to ensure this neglect never happens again?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Can I say it is really this whole matter is, and the allegations that surround it are extremely distressing for us all. But can I say the matter is not helped by questions from the opposition that leave out vital facts that are a part of this case, Mr President. That leave out
Senator
vital
Colbeck,
facts.
please resume your seat. I can't hear the minister's answer. I need to be able to hear it. Senator Colbeck, to continue.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, it is really disappointing that the opposition leaves out vital elements of what was even in the media this morning as part of their question, to cast an impression that actually isn't true. Mr President, the gentleman concerned was attended by a GP. The gentleman concerned was attended by a GP. This was not an act of the aged care facility. So for the Labor Party to come in here and try and create the impression that it was is, quite frankly, completely dishonest. And I've been very, very careful with respect to the circumstances and the detail that I put on the table with respect to these things. And I'd ask
Senator Pratt, a final supplementary
Many
question.
older Australians in residential aged care have died this year as a result of neglect.
Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, every person in this chamber would abhor any circumstance where a senior Australian has had that circumstance occur. Every single one of us would have that view. That is why this government called the Royal Commission, because we want to reform this sector in a way that provides high-quality care to senior Australians.
Order.
That is our objective,
Senator Colbeck. Senator Gallagher, on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Point of order on relevance. The question was very direct. There was no preamble. It was how many Australians in residential aged care have died this year as a result of neglect. I'd ask the minister to come to the answer of the question.
Quite right, Senator Gallagher. I have previously ruled that where there is a specific question that relates to the search for a fact, directly relevant will be applied very, very tightly. I call the minister to turn to the question. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. There have been, over the course of the last 12 months, a number of allegations of neglect in aged care, and we're dealing with some of those as a part of the questions that we're being asked today. Mr President, well, Mr President, Senator Polly interjects and says that they're more than allegations, but can I say that's exactly what they are. They are allegations at this point in time, Mr
Order.
President.
Senator Colbeck, I've got Senator Wong on a point of order. I'll call Senator Wong when senators on my left give her an opportunity to be heard. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. I repeat Senator Gallagher's point of order.
Yes, this was a specific factual question that for which an answer can be provided or a discussion of the topic in question. I have previously ruled that where there is no preamble or commentary or politically contestable terms, that questions need to be taken strictly at their face value. So, Minister, I remind you of the question. Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, I have allegations of people who may have died of neglect, but I have no direct evidence of anyone who has died of neglect.
Senator Colbeck, thank you. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister. In an extreme act of violence, an Aboriginal woman and her baby were attacked by a Nazi with a flamethrower this week. Why hasn't the Prime Minister had anything to say about this?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President, and I thank Senator Thorpe for her question. I am aware of an investigation by WA Police into a reported assault. I have heard media commentary along the lines of that which you have described, Senator Thorpe. Let me make very clear, if those facts are true, then of course they are to completely and utterly be condemned. They are shameful. All forms of hatred and division are unacceptable and should be condemned, and I have no doubt the Prime Minister—
Senator Thorpe on a point of order. Senator Thorpe.
Relevance, President. My question is, why hasn't the Prime Minister said anything, or the so-called leader of this country?
Senator Thorpe, the Minister has been speaking for 39 seconds. He was discussing directly the first part of the question, which I think is directly relevant. I've allowed you to restate the second part of the question, but I believe he's being directly relevant by addressing the facts that you outlined at the context for your question. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. As I was mid-sentence saying, I have no doubt the Prime Minister would share my condemnation of the events, the horror of all Australians.
Order. Order. Order.
Would share the condemnation, I am sure, of all fair-thinking Australians of the events.
Senator Thorpe, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. This government's silence is violence. Why does this government condone these attacks by saying nothing, which just means you contribute to the problem?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, I reject the question entirely. The government in no way condones such horrific events and unreservedly condemns them.
Order. Order. I'll call Senator Thorpe when there's silence. Senator Thorpe, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. What are you doing about these white nationalist terrorists? If these terrorists were anything other than white, you would have moved heaven and earth to find them.
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Mr President, the government rejects extremism in all of its forms, including right-wing extremism or any other.
Order.
Our increase in funding and support for agencies such as ASIO to be able to respond to extremism enables the security agencies, as they have done, to identify the rise in different types of extremism, including the rise in right-wing extremism. The government has funded the agencies to do that work because we know that it needs effective law enforcement and intelligence activities to respond to it. That's why we've taken that action. It's why we support that work of our agencies, and we will continue to do so regardless of whatever type of extremism it relates to.
Order. Senator McAllister.
Thanks very much, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Payne. The Respect at Work report was delivered almost a year ago. In his speech at the International Women's Day breakfast this morning, Mr Morrison said, and I quote, "My hope is that we will live in a society where we can truly say that women are respected, because from the disrespect of women, all the other challenges flow. It starts with the failure of respect for women." Can the minister explain why the Attorney-General, Mr Porter, has sat on the Respect at Work report for almost a year without implementing a single substantive legislative recommendation?
The Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And just to clarify, Senator McAllister, I believe you asked me as Minister for Women, but I do also represent the Attorney-General in this place. As the Senator has indicated, this government commissioned the Respect at Work report into sexual harassment in Australian workplaces, which, as the Senator has indicated, was tabled by the government last year. Sexual harassment in Australian workplaces, which of course has been in its most appalling representation, the subject of significant discussion in this place in the last weeks. It is an issue that can affect any workplace, and so the report by the Sex Discrimination Commissioner and her team is a very important report, which needs, we believe, a unified national response from all Australian governments, as well as from employers and industry. So, as part of the budget, last budget, 2021, including in the 2020 Women's Economic Security Statement, the government announced $2.1 million over 3 years to provide practical support to employers and employees to prevent and address sexual harassment in Australian workplaces. That funding will contribute towards the implementation of key recommendations from the AHRC's landmark report, and that includes the Council itself, which will be led by Sex Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins, will bring together existing leaders from bodies with a role in preventing and responding to workplace sexual harassment. The Council will work to promote safer workplaces and provide high-level advice
Payne,
to the government.
Senator McAllister on a point of order. Senator McAllister.
I have been listening to the answer, but my point of order goes to relevance. I asked specifically about the failure to implement any of the substantive legislative recommendations. I'd like the minister to address that part of the question, which was a narrow question.
I've allowed you to remind the minister of the question. I think it is in order and being directly relevant for the minister to be discussing other measures the government has taken, and that is an opportunity that can be debated after question time as to the Senate's consideration of those answers. Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. I was referring to the recommendation in relation to the Council, which will be led by the Sex Discrimination Commissioner. That funding through the budget will also support the implementation of 9 other key recommendations from the report, including the development of the online information platform.
Time for the answer has expired. Senator McAllister, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. The Australian Human Rights Commission has recommended the amendment of the Sex Discrimination Act to, and I quote, "introduce a positive duty on employers to take reasonable and proportionate measures to eliminate sex discrimination, sexual harassment and victimisation." Will the Morrison government amend the Sex Discrimination Act to reflect this recommendation?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. The government is, as I was saying, Mr President, considering the recommendations of the report. It was a very wide-ranging report, and deliberately so, Mr President. It considered matters that are relevant to business, to industry, to independent agencies, to education providers, to state and territory governments and to the Commonwealth. I referred to the online information platform, Mr President, which is recommendation 48. Recommendations 9, 34, 36, 37, 40 and 52 concerning the package of training and education resources.
Point of order. Senator McAllister.
Yes, my point of order is relevance. The question went to a specific recommendation made by the Australian Human Rights Commission. I've asked the minister, will the government be implementing that recommendation? I have not asked about the other recommendations in the report.
You've reminded the minister of the question, and again I remind ministers that where there is a very specific question, and I do consider this question relatively specific in nature, referring to a recommendation, I believe is the language I caught, that their comments should be addressed to matters that are directly relevant to that particular issue. Senator Payne, to continue.
Thank you, Mr President. I believe I still had half of my time available to me to respond to the senator's question. I was referring to those other recommendations and recommendation 2 in relation to a 2022 survey, a specific recommendation to evaluate the effectiveness of these new measures to track levels of sexual harassment. The government is considering the other recommendations, including the one that Senator McAllister has referred to, and will respond in due course.
Senator McAllister, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. When launching the Respect at Work report, the minister said, and I quote, "I take these recommendations very seriously and I'm committed to ensuring that sexual harassment is eradicated from workplaces in this country." A year on, with not a single substantive legislative recommendation implemented, what is the minister doing to deliver on this commitment?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I have already alluded to the recommendations in the report that were taken up in the Women's Economic Security Statement in October last year, the specific recommendations that I actually don't think Senator McAllister wanted to hear about, those specific recommendations that are being pursued through that process. The Attorney-General, with whom I work on these matters, and now welcome very much the opportunity to work with my colleague Senator Stoker, who has specific portfolio responsibility in this area with the Attorney-General as the Assistant Minister. We met indeed in this parliamentary sitting, Mr President, to discuss these issues. It's a matter the government takes very seriously. There were, as I said, I think 55 recommendations in total, 20 for the Commonwealth Government, another 4 that did propose to the Respect at Work Council, 12 that are shared between the Commonwealth and state and territory governments, 13 for government agencies and regulators, 3 for education providers and 3 for business and industry. It's a whole of government, whole of community, whole of Australia responsibility, Mr President, and we are—
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Energy, Senator Seselja. Minister, the Western Australian Liberal National Party opposition has committed to shut down Western Australian coal power by 2025. In the place of reliable baseload coal power will be $16 billion of wind and solar power. The role of maintaining backup power into the entire Western Australian grid when wind and solar fail, as they inevitably do, will fall on a battery. Minister, can you please explain to the House how Western Australia's 2,500 megawatts of average daily power use can be met by a battery, and how many calm, rainy days in a row will put the entire state into a blackout?
The Minister for Energy and representing the Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction, Senator Seselja.
Thank you very much, and I thank Senator Roberts for the question. In terms of the detail of the Western Australian Liberal opposition's policy, I can't speak to the absolute detail of that, so I could take some of that on notice. But when it comes to energy security and the need to take action, our government, of course, has laid its priorities on the table, and so those priorities, of course, include a strong focus on reliable and affordable energy, and whether that's with our plans when it comes to gas, whether that's in record investment in renewables, whether that is in extending the life of other baseload power, whether that is in Snowy Hydro 2.0, whether that is the work we are doing with the battery for the nation. We have a proud record of ensuring that we have reliable and affordable power whilst investing in renewable energy, meeting our emissions reductions targets on an international scale and creating jobs and supporting manufacturing. But in terms of the detail of some of those policies you go to, I'm happy to take those on notice.
Senator Roberts, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Minister, the Liberal Nationals' plan is to build 4,500 megawatts of wind and solar to replace the 1,050 megawatts of baseload power that coal provides. What is the reliability factor of wind and solar? Because this policy puts wind and solar deliverability at just 23% of rated capacity.
Senator Seselja.
Well, thank you very much. And again, going to the detail of that policy, I'm happy to take some of that on notice. But there is no doubt that when it comes to delivering on these policies, we have made it very, very clear over a period of time that wind and solar and renewables, and of course we've got record investment in renewables in Australia at the moment. They are very important, but you do need to ensure you have baseload capacity to ensure that we don't see the kind of situation that we saw under the former Labor government in South Australia, where the lights are going out, where electricity is not being delivered. Thank you for the interjection, Senator Wong. It is true that the only statewide blackout that I'm aware of in recent times did happen in South Australia under the watch of the South Australian Labor government. But when it comes to actual investment in energy, it is absolutely important. And I'll just state it again. I've run out of time. I might do it on the next sub.
Senator Roberts, a final supplementary question.
President, thank you. Minister, how many workers will lose their jobs from the coal industry in Western Australia as a result of this Liberal National Party policy?
Senator Seselja.
I thank Senator Roberts for the question, and again going to the detail of that policy. Without having read that particular policy document, it would be impossible for me to comment one way or another. But what I can tell you is that our Liberal National Government has been focused on ensuring that we are growing jobs in the economy, bringing jobs back as we recover from COVID, investing in our energy resources so we can support a strong manufacturing sector, whether that is in our technology focus, whether that is in our focus on gas, whether that is in our investment in renewables, whether that is in extending the life of power stations, whether that is in areas like Snowy Hydro 2.0. We have a comprehensive policy that supports energy, reliable and affordable energy. We are bringing prices down. That supports a viable manufacturing industry amongst other industries. That's our record. That's what we're going to continue to fight for, to bring back jobs and support reliable and affordable energy.
Senator Small.
Thanks, Mr President. My question is for the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. With the vaccine rollout underway and continuing signs of economic recovery across the country, can the Minister please update the Senate on how the Morrison government's economic supports through COVID-19 have helped small businesses to ride out the crisis and Australians to stay in jobs?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Small for the question and again acknowledge to the chamber Senator Small's background, in particular as being a small business owner back in our home state of Western Australia, and the fact that he really understands what it's like to build a business from scratch, to employ people, to pay wages and to certainly have sleepless nights. And Mr President, as we now know in Australia, the COVID-19 vaccine rollout is underway, and so is Australia's economic recovery. According to the latest Australian Bureau of Statistics labour force statistics for January, we've seen a net increase in jobs of 29,000, and that of course came off the back of the creation of 59,000 full-time jobs. We've also seen, as Senator Payne knows, women's workforce participation return to the near record levels it was prior to the pandemic. Underemployment is now falling, and as we know, over 93% of the jobs lost during COVID-19 have now returned back to the economy. Mr President, all of this has been possible because of the support that the Morrison government has provided to, in particular, small and family businesses across Australia. We put in place policies that have kept Australians in work because we put in place the policies that kept businesses in business. These, of course, included JobKeeper, apprentice and trainee wage subsidies, the cash flow boost that of course gave people back their own hard-earned money, the SME guarantee scheme, the early withdrawal of superannuation. We put in place a suite of policies, and this suite of policies have all played a vital role. In fact, when you look at the RBA research, it estimates that JobKeeper saved over 700,000 jobs in the first half of 2020. Mr President, in our supporting apprentices and trainee wage subsidy, it's now supported over 59,000 small businesses to keep 119,000 apprentices on the job where we need them to
Senator
be.
Cash. Senator Small, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. Minister, can you outline how the labour market has responded to the tapering of JobKeeper and other COVID-19 economic supports implemented by the Morrison government?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, as I've said, we've seen now 93%, or around 93%, of the jobs that were lost as a result of COVID-19 return back to the economy. And what we are seeing is that the transition to the second phase of JobSeeker has been successful. And what it is doing is ensuring that support is targeted to those who need it most. In fact, between September and December of 2020, we saw the level of economic support fall by $30 billion. At the same time the support was tapered, the economy added 320,000 jobs. New analysis of tax microdata by Treasury shows that the number of Phase 2 JobKeeper workers who are working 0 or very low hours has now been decreasing over time. But what we've also seen is record numbers of previously unemployed people finding new jobs. And in fact, Mr President, to November 2020, we saw a record of 170,000 unemployed people into the
supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. As the original COVID-19 supports begin to conclude, how will the Morrison government continue to support small business through the jobs recovery over the course of 2021?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, as the Prime Minister has always said, our #1 priority as a government is getting Australians back into work, keeping businesses in business and getting Australians back into work. We, of course, have our $74 billion JobMaker plan. That is, as you know, it's supporting employers to hire, to bring on additional people into their workplace. We're supporting Australians to train, to upskill, to reskill, and, of course, we're supporting hard-working small business owners to grow their own business. Our economic support measures have boosted family and business balance sheets. We now see over $200 billion extra in savings over the last year. We're also unlocking confidence to spend that money, which is a good thing, particularly in our small businesses. And as we know, small businesses, they are the backbone of the Australian economy, and we need to do everything that we can to support them. We know that there's a long road ahead, but we are committed to boosting the confidence of Australians and, of course, ensuring that Australians remain
Senator
in work.
Cash. Senator Rice.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Minister Payne. Minister, the US government sought extradition of Australian citizen Julian Assange from the UK for espionage. Espionage is a political offence for which extradition is expressly barred from the US-UK extradition treaty. Minister, given the political nature of extradition, have you personally made representations to the incoming Biden administration to drop the US appeal against the UK court decision to not extradite Mr Assange? And if not, will you?
The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. I thank Senator Rice for her question. Senator Rice, as I believe I have advised the chamber previously, I have raised the situation of Mr Assange with my previous United States counterpart, former Secretary of State Pompeo. I have not yet met with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, but I am sure that in the course of such a meeting that this matter would be raised.
Senator Rice, a supplementary question.
Minister, my question is, basically, will you commit to picking up the phone to be asking the US administration to drop the charges against Mr Assange? Minister, there were reports that the Trump administration in the latter days of the Trump term was close to pardoning Assange and may have done so if they had received representations from the Australian government. Will you pick up the phone to the incoming Biden administration?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. As I again have previously advised the chamber, Mr Assange is subject to a legal process in another country. Australia does not interfere in the legal processes of other countries and has long held that position across multiple governments, as we would not expect other governments to interfere in legal processes in our country. Mr Assange is currently the subject of a United States appeal against the decision of the British courts that he is ineligible for extradition due to the court forming a view in relation to a risk of self-harm in the US prison. That appeal was lodged on the 12th of February. I don't intend to provide a running commentary on the details of the case as it is before the courts. We continue to monitor Mr Assange's case closely, as we do for Australians in detention overseas.
Senator Rice, a final supplementary question.
Minister, when is enough enough? Julian Assange has suffered so much, and the judge in the UK case has basically said that extradition to the US is effectively a death sentence. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has said that the failure of the judgment to denounce and redress the persecution and torture of Mr Assange leaves fully intact the intended intimidating effect on journalists and whistleblowers. So is it the Australian government's position that extraditing Julian
Senator
Assange
Rice,
to the US
time
is
for the
acceptable?
question has expired. Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Members of my office and of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade met with Mr Assange's legal team in this sitting period to discuss a range of matters, including the matter of Mr Assange. This government has sought, through our consular officials and through the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the High Commission in Britain, to support Mr Assange in an appropriate consular fashion in any way we could. We have done that by seeking his consent to discuss any prison condition issues with prison officials, to offer him consular assistance. We have done that on 21 separate occasions. On 21 separate occasions, no response has been received to that correspondence from Mr Assange or from his representatives. The government has endeavoured to provide him with that appropriate support. We will continue to do that. He withdrew consent for us to consult in relation to any of his circumstances, his health or his welfare, in 2019. We have continued to raise with UK government officials our expectations of how he would—
Senator Wilson, I called you to order and you kept interjecting while I was doing so. Please cease. Senator Walsh.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Cash. This morning, the Home Affairs Minister claimed he is not allowed to disclose information provided to him by the Australian Federal Police. But he also admitted to breaking that rule and providing information to the Prime Minister's office about Brittany Higgins' case on February 12. Who in the Prime Minister's office received that official information, and at what time was it received?
The Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank the Senator for the question. I understand that the Minister for Home Affairs has been asked this question in the House, but the information that again I have before me that I can provide you with is basically what I've stated yesterday. AFP Commissioner Kershaw first advised Minister Dutton of Ms Higgins' allegations on Thursday, the 11th of February 2021. This was the first time the minister had been advised of Ms Higgins' allegations. As I advised yesterday, he received further updates from Commissioner Kershaw during last week and this week. He was advised that his office was not aware of Ms Higgins' allegations prior to his briefing from Commissioner Kershaw on the 11th of February 2021. And again, I think, as I stated yesterday, as senators would know, the handling of allegations and investigation of criminal conduct, including briefing to ministers, is a matter for the AFP. Further information that I can provide, the minister, as the minister responsible for the AFP, has stated that he regularly receives confidential briefings from the Commissioner. He has a responsibility to protect the integrity of investigations and the information discussed in these briefings. He has stated that it was his judgment that he should not disclose the information provided to him, as this was an ongoing operational matter. I understand he's also advised that his Chief of Staff contacted the Prime Minister's office the next day, on the 12th of February, following the receipt of media inquiries, and that's the information that I have before me.
Senator Walsh, a supplementary question.
Thank you, President. At any time was this minister aware of any estimates briefing being prepared in relation to the events of the night of 22-23 March 2019?
Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I've referred to Mr Dutton's evidence that he has advised that his office was not aware of Ms Higgins' allegations prior to his briefing from Commissioner Kershaw on the 11th of February 2021, and also his evidence that the AFP Commissioner Kershaw first advised him of Ms Higgins' allegations on Thursday, the 11th of February 2021, and as such that was the first time he was advised of Ms Higgins' allegations.
Senator Walsh, a final supplementary question.
In October 2019, the minister left a message from Ms Higgins saying, and I quote, "Daniel has got everything under control, I promise you." At that time, Senator Cash was the minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs in the Senate. What did Daniel have under control?
Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President. And Senator Walsh, I actually responded to that question when Senator Watt asked it of me, and I would refer you back to that answer.
Senator Abetz.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne. Will the minister outline what the government is doing to deliver on Australia's commitment to provide COVID-19 vaccines to our neighbours in Southeast Asia and the Pacific?
The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. I thank Senator Abetz for his question. Mr President, Australia's security, our safety and our prosperity are intertwined with those in our region. We are working in close partnership with our neighbours to implement our over $500 million Regional Vaccine Access Initiative and our $80 million contribution to the COVAX Facilities Fund for Developing Countries. That fund began its first delivery of vaccines yesterday to protect some of the world's most vulnerable people. We're consulting with 18 partner countries across the Pacific and Southeast Asia to align their national vaccine deployment plans and to directly address their priorities. Our support is deliberately end-to-end. So we're providing technical advice to support the rollout of vaccines under the COVAX facility. We have already assisted Vanuatu, Kiribati, Samoa and Tonga in this way. In particular, we're supporting Tonga to develop and implement a new national vaccination register. We're deploying Australian specialists to work with these partner governments. Our National Centre for Immunisation Research and Surveillance is deploying a specialist to Timor-Leste to support preparations for their national rollout. Australia's Therapeutic Goods Administration is providing advice to our partners, which is critical in building that trust in the safety and efficacy of vaccines. Our support includes identifying target populations for early vaccinations, developing public health materials, strengthening cold chain and medical supply management, and establishing monitoring and evaluation arrangements. For example, we'll shortly be training Solomon Islands epidemiologists in data collection and analysis. My Indonesian counterpart, Retno Marsudi, and I have agreed a strong package of support for Indonesia to procure vaccines and to provide technical assistance. I also discussed our support with Secretary Teddy Locsin, the Foreign Secretary of the Philippines, this week as well. This is a program which is meeting the pledges that Australia has made to support our shared regional recovery from the pandemic.
Senator Abetz, a supplementary question.
I thank the Minister for that very interesting answer and ask, will the Minister advise what the government is doing to coordinate with our partners on this vaccination program?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. And cooperation with our partners is absolutely critical. By coordinating our efforts with New Zealand, with the US and with France, we will cover the vaccination needs of the Pacific. And this is a matter which the Minister for International Development in the Pacific, Senator Selja, and I have been engaging on with counterparts across the region. We're talking with other potential suppliers, including India and Japan. We're working with the World Health Organization, with UNICEF, with multilateral development banks, the Pacific Island Forum, the Pacific Community and with ASEAN to ensure support that meets international standards. We'll purchase vaccines through organisations such as UNICEF and we'll share vaccines from our own supply pipeline with both the Pacific and Timor-Leste. We're also Vice-Chair of the Gavi Board, Mr President, and through that we've negotiated to ensure all eligible Pacific Island countries are covered by the COVAX facility, which will deliver over 1 million doses to the Pacific and Timor-Leste by the middle of this year.
Senator Abetz, a final supplementary question.
Will the Minister explain how this important initiative will deliver improved regional health security and economic recovery?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. This is a very important question from Senator Abetz, because vaccination is a critical public health measure to take control of COVID-19, to end the pandemic and to ensure recovery. So timely access to safe and effective vaccines will improve our regional health security and also reduce burdens on regional health systems. It will pave the way, importantly, for the reopening of borders, for re-establishing transport routes and restarting economies. It will boost critical sectors, including seasonal work, so important to our region, international tourism, vital to our region, and a range of agricultural industries that depend on the availability of regular international transport services. It's important that our region works together to vaccinate populations, to bring about that shared economic recovery. We will ensure that we support our neighbours in this process and that we deliver on our COVID-19 development program pivot on partnerships for recovery.
Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. Yesterday, following COVID vaccine overdoses by a doctor in Queensland, the Minister for Health and Aged Care claimed, and I quote, "The specific training of this Australian-trained doctor were all carried out in accordance with procedures, and every one of those steps has been checked and rechecked, and none of those steps had been breached." He and this minister were then forced to correct the record, advising the doctor had not completed the required training. Why has the minister let this rollout commence in aged care homes without ensuring that everyone administering the vaccinations had the required training?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, both the Minister for Health and Aged Care and myself believed that it was important that we put on the public record as quickly as possible the information that we had available to us with respect to the circumstances that occurred at the aged care facility in Queensland, Mr President. We were assured via the Deputy Chief Medical Officer that by Healthcare Australia that the doctor involved had in fact undertaken the required training. We were subsequently advised on further investigation and inquiry that that had not been the case, Mr President. So what we have done is taken specific action to ensure, via our own circumstances, that every worker working through and working on the vaccine rollout in aged care across the country is independently ordered by us. Mr President, I think it's the Labor should be very cautious about the language that they're using with respect to this matter, Mr President. They should be very, very cautious.
Order.
They are contributing,
Order.
Mr President. Labor Party are contributing with their language
Order.
to an undermining of the confidence in the vaccination process across the country, Mr President. Their language is directly contributing to the undermining of the confidence in the vaccination process across this country, Mr President, which we all agree is absolutely vital, Mr President. Absolutely vital that we maintain confidence in the vaccination process around the country, Mr President. And I'm very pleased to note that the acceptance rate, the confirmation rate of residents in aged care facilities around the country remains high. It remains high, which is exactly what we want, because, Mr President, we want senior Australians protected
Senator Colbeck,
by
time
the
for the
application
answer
of the
has
vaccine.
expired. Senator Watt, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Did the general practitioner who was responsible for the overdoses have conditions on his registration? If so, why were these conditions permitted under the contract entered into by the Morrison government?
Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, I'll have to take the specifics of any details in relation to the doctor
Senator Gallagher
concerned on notice, Mr President. Mr President, my advice is that it wasn't. He's not a general practitioner. He's a doctor. My advice is that he's not a general practitioner.
Order, Senator Gallagher.
Mr President, and so I will take any specifics in relation to this. The doctor was an Australian-trained doctor, but I will take any specifics of any conditions that he may have had. There is currently an investigation being undertaken by the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Michael Kidd, into the circumstances of this case. Once that information is available to me, Mr President, I'm very happy to provide it to the chamber.
Senator Watt, a final supplementary question. Order.
Thank you, Mr President. What clinical governance has the government put in place to ensure everyone administering COVID vaccines is properly and fully trained?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. As I indicated in my previous first answer, the Australian government is taking an independent audit across all of those people who are working on the vaccine rollout into aged care in the country, independent of the processes that exist within the organisations that are taking out the rollout. We have also asked the former Chief Nurse and Midwifery Officer to be a part of the Healthcare Australia, be embedded into Healthcare Australia. So we are undertaking our own independent oversight to ensure that all of those who are participating in the rollout are appropriately qualified and trained.
Senator Birmingham.
President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.